When editing your project, if you don't have a transition between two clips, that's simply called a cut. For example here, as we go from the boiling raspberries to the orange, without any transition in place, that is simply a cut. But sometimes you want to have a transition in there, for example a cross dissolve or a wipe. Let's go ahead and add some of those transitions here in Final Cut. To do that, open up the Transitions browser. You'll notice in here that you have a series of transitions that you can choose from. To preview what any transition looks like, simply skim the mouse over the icon and it will show you in the main playback window exactly what that transition will look like. There's a basic cross dissolve, here's a band transition, and so on. To add a transition to your project, just click the transition and drag and drop it between the two clips where you want to add it. As you can see, once we've added that in, we can play it back immediately. So for example, again, there is our simple cross dissolve. If you want to try out a different transition, you don't actually have to delete the one that's in here. You can simply go over to the Transitions browser, grab another one, and drag and drop it on to replace it, and see exactly how that one looks. Let's add one more. I'll try out this black hole, and drag and drop that on. If you want to change the duration of your transition, simply select it, and click on the edge, and make it longer or shorter. If we make this one longer, you can really see what's happening with this transition. You'll notice as well that the transitions are broken into different categories, for example blurs, dissolves, lights, movements, and so on. Any one of these that you want to try again, simply click and drag it on, and see how it looks. If you know exactly the one that you want to find though, you can go back up to the All menu, and then down here, using Search, just type in the word that you're looking for. For example, light gives me two different light transitions, light noise and light sweep. Let's try light sweep. I'll drag and drop that on, move the playhead to the beginning, and click play. As you can see, there are many different transitions options in Final Cut Pro. Keep in mind though, that too many of them can be quite distracting to a project, so use them sparingly and try to find ones that are most effective in telling your story. In traditional editing, you cannot add a transition if you don't have sufficient heads or tails. Let me show you what I mean. See on this clip here, if I try to make this any longer, the edge of the clip goes red, telling me that I can't make it any longer because there's no extra media. If I drag back, I can make it shorter, but I simply cannot make it any longer. The same thing goes for the other clip. If I try and make the head shorter, I can do that, but I can't make it any longer. There simply isn't any more media. This is the full duration of this clip, and this is the full duration of this one. This clip has no additional tail, and this one has no additional head. That means if I try to create a transition between them, it simply can't happen. Without media to transition from one clip into the other, a transition is simply not possible. However, in Final Cut Pro, it is possible. Let me show you what I mean. If I take this clip and I drag it onto here, Final Cut Pro actually will allow me to add a transition. But before I drop that, watch very carefully what's happening. Notice the overall length of this clip and the overall length of the project. As I take this cross dissolve and I add it in, the project actually gets shorter. I now have the ability to have a cross dissolve, but I've changed the overall duration of my project. If you're new to editing, this can be an incredibly convenient feature. But if you're a bit more experienced, you may find this a little bit frustrating because you're used to having your project not change duration. Well, there is a preference for that, so you can switch it to a more advanced setting. I'm going to undo that, so now I'm back to my original media the way it was. And then under the Final Cut Pro menu, choose Preferences. From the Preferences menu, you can choose Editing, and down underneath that, you'll see an option that says Apply Transitions using Full Overlap, which is the default, or you can switch it to Available Media. Available media means that only the available media will be used for a transition. If that's 5 frames or 10 frames, that's all you'll have, and if there are no frames, then you simply won't be able to create a transition. So now that we've done that, let's see what happens if I try to add a cross dissolve. First of all, you'll notice that without the media, the cross dissolve doesn't even show up on the timeline. But watch what happens if I go ahead and let go of the mouse anyway. Final Cut Pro pops up a dialog warning me that there's not enough clip media to create the transition. But it's also asking me if I'd like it to, one time only, create a full overlap, and go ahead and change the duration of the project. If I don't ever want to see that dialog, I can disable that so it doesn't come up again. If I go ahead and select it, it creates the full overlap, and as you saw, it shortened the duration of that last clip. Understanding exactly where transitions come from and how they work can be helpful as you get more and more advanced in your projects. But again, if you're just beginning, it's easiest to just leave Final Cut Pro in its default setting and let it do what it needs to do to create the transitions that you want to see. Some of the transitions in Final Cut Pro have some pretty advanced settings. For example, let's look for one called Clone Spin. With that located, I can click and drag that onto my timeline, and if I want to, make it even just a little bit bigger. Now you'll notice right away that this transition has added a whole bunch of buttons to the timeline itself. And if you look up here in the preview window, you'll see exactly what those buttons are. Each one of these little tiles is a frame of video, and the number corresponds to which frame we're going to see in the project. So for example, here's frame 1. Let's choose a different segment of the timeline for that. As I drag it through on the timeline itself, let's go ahead and stop it just where the water is pouring into the pot. Let's do the same thing with frame 2. I can drag that back and forth and find another portion of that. Let's put it just where the brown sugar is being scooped in. And I can continue that for 3 and 4 and so on. Then as I scrub through here, you'll see what's happening and how we're actually zooming out to see a portion of the clip before and a portion of the clip after it. Some transitions have additional settings over here in the inspector. This particular clip doesn't have many, but let's grab a different one. For example, Black Hole, which I'll just go ahead and drag onto the timeline to replace the one that was there, gives me a whole series of options under the inspector. I can choose to turn trails on and off for that black hole transition, change the number of echo patterns that are in there, whether the trail is light or dark, and more. Underneath that, you'll see an option that's common to every transition in here, and that's the audio crossfade. By default, the crossfade is set to a fade in and fade out type of plus 3 dB, but you can change that in here. Now how do you know if you should change this? Well, there's really no rule to go by, except that, does it sound good? When you add a transition between two clips, how does the audio sound? If you don't like the transition between them, go in here and try a different setting and see if one sounds better than another. As you can see, there are many different options for all the transitions that you have available. There are so many transitions, we can't go through them all, but all you need to do is drag a transition onto the timeline and then take a look in the inspector and see what controls you have for it. You may find that there are some exciting controls making transitions look completely different than they started, giving your video a unique look. Adding titles to your project is a great way to add context to your video, to give credit to those involved at the end, or to simply call out attention to certain details throughout the video. Let's take a look at the titling options that we have in Final Cut Pro. If you click on the T button in the toolbar here, you'll see that it opens up your title browser. And as you can see, there are a lot of different titles we can choose from. If you want to see what any one of these is going to look like before applying it to your project, simply skim the mouse over the title and you'll see a quick sample up in the main viewer of exactly what that title is going to look like. As you can see, there's a lot of different types of titles to choose from in here. There are several different categories, but these can be broken down into two different types. There's the type of title that you're seeing here that is designed to go on top of existing video or another textured background. And then if we scroll down quite a ways, you'll see that there are titles such as this one here that are designed to completely stand alone. We'll take a look at both of these types. Let's start off with something really simple. If you look over here on the left, you'll see that these are broken into categories, including build in and out, bumpers or openers, which are great for starting off a project, credits for the end of your movie, elements for calling attention to certain details, and then lower thirds. Lower thirds are pretty common and a great way to add some context to your project. Let's start off with this first one here called clouds. As I skim the mouse over it, you see that we have these little clouds that pop up with a name and description option in them. Let's go ahead and add this to the project. When you click and drag on one of these titles to add it to the project, there's a few different ways you can add it in. If I simply drop it on top of a clip as you're seeing here, it's going to want to replace that video clip, and that's probably not what we're after. If I slide it between two existing clips, you'll see that it moves the other clip out of the way, making room for it. In this case, that's not what we want either. For this particular type of title, a lower third, what we really want to do is add it on top of existing footage. Once that's on there, we can simply put the playhead back and play through it and see exactly what that title looks like. Now as you can see, there's already a placeholder for name and description. So if we select the title and then go up here to the canvas and simply click on here, we can go ahead and type in whatever name we want. So let's call this one Alenka's Kitchen. And in the second field, under description, we're going to call this Slovenian pancakes. Now, you may have noticed that the title was a bit too long to fit in there, yet Final Cut Pro automatically scaled that down to fit for us. Let's go ahead and back this up and play through it and see how it looks now. I think that looks great, but it's also a little bit short. So if you want to change the duration of the title, notice that this bar on top can be changed. I can simply grab this and make it shorter, or make it longer. I can even extend the duration to go over the following clip in the timeline. Now let's back it up and see what it looks like. As you can see, the text is on screen for much longer now, and we're going to see a video change underneath it before that clip disappears. Great. So that's one way that we can do it. Let's go ahead and delete this and add another type of title in here. I'm going to go up to the bumpers and openers and grab this one here called Ink. As you can see, this is one that's not designed to go over existing video, but designed to work on its own. Let's go ahead and take this and put it at the very beginning of the project. As I get the mouse towards the edge of that clip, you'll see that the other footage is moved out of the way, making space for the new clip that we just brought in. We can go ahead and play that back right away and see exactly what it looks like by default. Obviously, we need to change the name of it. It can't just say title. So let's go ahead and select it and click up here in the canvas again to change that title. That looks pretty good, but as you can see, we really can't see the whole title. In this particular preset, the font size didn't automatically change for us, so we're going to need to change that font size manually. To do that, and to access all the other controls for that preset, open the inspector. Once that's open, you'll see that some of these titles have an incredible amount of control to them. For example, on this one, I could change the font if I wanted to. I quite like the font the way it is, but I can also change the font size. In this case, we'll need to make this a little bit smaller so we can see the whole title get revealed. Let's make it right about there. You can also change the background on this one. It's currently set to bamboo, but we could choose a canvas background, concrete, limestone, or any other one of these presets in here. At any point, if you want to play back, just drag the playhead back and tap on play. So we've seen a lower third, and we've also seen a bumper or opener that's designed to exist entirely on its own. Let's take a look at another type of a title. Let's say that I want to put a title over the oranges in here. I don't want a lower third, I want an actual title here, but I just want to use this orange as a backdrop. Let's go ahead and search for a specific one. The one that I'm looking for is called Focus. So I'll go ahead and type Focus into the title, and as you can see here, we have one called Pull Focus. As I scrub the mouse over this, you'll see that the background actually goes blurry as the title develops. Let's try this one out. I'll go ahead and drag and drop this on top of the orange, and I'm going to position it right about at the beginning there so the title starts to come up just after the orange draws in. Let's go ahead and play it back and see what it looks like first. As you can see, the orange in the background has gone out of focus while the title came into focus, and then towards the end, the title went out of focus and the orange came back again. Now, of course, we can change the title just as before. Simply select the title, go up into the canvas, and start typing in your new name. Once again, if you want to, you can change the font over here. Let's choose something different. Gill Sans isn't quite what I want for this sort of a title. Let's choose something like this one here. I can change the font size as well if I like. Let's make that just a little bit bigger. And we'll play that back again. If you're looking at the title and you're thinking it doesn't look particularly clean, like this one here, notice how it looks a little bit jaggy around the edges? Chances are that's because you're viewing it at a shrunken down size. Right now you'll see that I'm actually viewing my canvas at only 24% of the actual size, when in fact it should be playing back much larger, but of course I don't have the biggest screen in the world here. So to truly see what your titles are going to look like, you want to view it a bit larger. Easy way to do that, of course, is to simply put the playhead back at the beginning, and then tap on the full screen icon, and watch your video playing back in full screen, and then you'll get a better idea of what it's going to look like. Just tap the escape key to get out of full screen. As you can see, there are a lot of different type of titles to work with inside of Final Cut Pro. Don't forget you have many different options to choose from, and many of these have options inside of them hidden inside the inspector. So be sure to explore them and look for ones that are going to make your video project look totally unique. Not every element that you add to your video project has to be something you shot yourself. Within Final Cut Pro, there's something called generators. And generators are a series of backgrounds or animated textures and more that you can add into your project. Let's take a look at some of these. As you can see, some of the basic ones are things like this colored blob background, or a simple curtain effect. These are great to put behind titles. But there's also generators in here, for example, the counting one. As you can see, this allows you to count from any number to any other number. Let's go ahead and add this onto the project and see what it looks like. I'll drag it in here and just tap on play, and as you can see, we're counting up from 0. But if I select that and open up the inspector, you'll see that there's quite a lot more we can do with it. Of course, we can change the color or the font, but we can also change the format of this. Do we want a number, a currency, percentage, and so on? Let's choose %. I can set a starting point and an ending point. I can choose how many decimal places are going to be in there, and more. Once that's all set up, I simply play back, and away we go. If all you're looking for is a simple color, there's the custom generator here as well. We can open that up and simply choose any color from the rainbow that we may want. Let's scroll down a little bit more and see what else there is. Here we see textures like grunge, industrial, and this natural one. Let's go ahead and add one of these in here. I'm going to delete the custom that we added previously and just drag this natural one into place. Notice when I play this one back, it's not actually a movie, it's just a still image. And if we select that and look at the inspector, you'll see that there's a lot of different types we can choose from. You can think of this as basic stock photography that you can add into your projects. Another very handy one in here is called the placeholder. Let's say you're shooting a large project and you realize you're missing a shot, or maybe you're just blocking it out, making some plans, and you know exactly what you want to put in what place, but you don't have that footage yet. You can take this placeholder and insert it into your project, and then in the inspector, change exactly what type of shot it's going to be. For the framing, you can choose from a long shot, to a medium long, medium shot, or a close-up. Let's back that off a little bit to a medium long shot. I can choose how many people I want in the project, and whether I want them all to be women, men, or a mix. I can even choose what type of background I have. Is it a rural background, pastoral, beach? I can change the type of day. Let's make it a cloudy day. You can change all of these to match the exact type of shot that you want, so that when you're going back through your project, you know exactly what you need to add in. You can even add in view notes and type something in to remind yourself of exactly what type of shot you want. Let's keep going down the list. I'll delete those other backgrounds, keep scrolling down, and you'll see another one called Shapes. Shapes is a simple shape generator that allows us to put any type of shape into our project. You can choose from circles, squares, diamonds, and so on. You can change the roundness of the corners on there, of course the color of the size of the outline, and so on. And finally down at the bottom, you'll see we have one called Timecode. For those that are in the world of professional video editing, this is extremely useful. You can go ahead and put a timecode generator on top of your footage, and now as you play it back, you'll see exactly what timecode that footage is actually shot at. And as you would expect, as you open the inspector, you have a variety of different changes that you can make to this timecode generator, including the size, the color of the background, and so on. There's generators for all different types of uses inside of Final Cut Pro. Be sure to explore through them, and remember, almost every single one of these has more options inside the inspector, so there's not really just 26 of these. There's a lot more than that once you start digging in.